And we know COVID-19 is having a disastrous impact on the economy. One of the many industries especially hard hit is the restaurant industry. Many restaurateurs say they won't last another month. One is describing the situation as a living hell.
I'm terrified. I'm devastated. And I think that every small business owner is devastated. I can't sleep at night. I'm worried. I don't understand how we are supposed to get through the next month.
The ongoing pandemic and the restrictions and the regulations placed on restaurants have caused a major decline of sales for many restaurants. It was now just reported by Statistics Canada that eating and drinking establishments across Canada fell over a quarter by 28.8% in comparison to 2019. Now, this would actually be the biggest drop it has dealt with or seen within the last 2 decades. Now here, if you take a look at chart 2, it talks about the business revenue in 2020 and compared with 2019. Now the main bar to focus on in this graph definitely has to be the blue one, as it shows the businesses that reported a 40% or more decline in revenue. And now those establishments that were focused on things like catering, food trucks, and bars were affected the most by this pandemic lockdown measures. Their sales declined about 48.3% in 2020. However, those that were focused on, just simple fast food or takeout only suffered about 13.4% drop in sales. And that is why Restaurant Canada is calling on the Canadian government to take action and assist and provide support for those in the food service businesses. To be able to do this, all they ask for is assistance with labor costs, rent relief, and commercial tenant protections, and also help with cash flow and rising debt levels. Now, with all the regulations being put on the restaurants, there were slight changes that had to be made in order to better support many restaurants across Canada. On March 23rd, the Ontario government considered restaurants as essential services, but only for delivery and takeaway. Now, with restaurants being essential services, you can buy alcohol only with food or takeout, which was something that was not done prior to COVID-19. Now, the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario, which is the AGCO, was the one who basically deals with licensing and registration and authorizations, and they do extend the term of all active liquor and gaming licenses by 3 months in order to continue providing support to the people and businesses regulated by the ACGO and that were affected by COVID-19 pandemic.
Concerning the restaurant closures due to COVID-19, the figures are high and continue to grow with the policies that the Government of Canada has imposed. According to Forbes magazine, 60% of Canadian restaurants could close in the next 3 months due to COVID-19, says industry group. Knowing that social distancing is one of the most recommended practices by doctors to prevent COVID, the food industry has been strongly affected since its spaces represent a high risk of contagion for the population. Although measures have been necessary to control the spread of the virus, the subsidies have not been enough to keep restaurants alive in Canada. On the other hand, restaurants that have managed to adapt to the change in the pandemic have faced extra expenses such as sanitation protocols, additional training for masks, and even the reduction of staff within restaurants. The number of Canadian restaurant closures since March of 2020 reached a staggering 10,000, according to Restaurants Canada. And the most terrible is that it is not known when it can stop.
Today I'm going to talk about layoffs, cuts, and people losing their job because of COVID-19. COVID-19 has struck a death blow to the food industry. As it has to every other sector, it is a complete disaster for students who work part-time in restaurants rather than as store owners. For someone like myself who is studying and working at the same time, this year has been very challenging. First, our working hours were reduced, and as a result, we began to earn lower wages. Eventually, with the full closures and restrictions, our staff of 10 was reduced to 5, and I was forced to become unemployed at the end of the month. Many international students, including myself, were thinking how to live on the money left over at the end of the month because we didn't have enough to pay our rent. Those who did have enough money to pay rent were considering how to make ends meet with the money they had left over at the end of the month. Furthermore, according to some researchers, the restriction resulted in the layoff of 355,000 people in Ontario, and 765,000 people were forced to reduce their working hours. However, as the pandemic's impact faded and vaccines reached more people, many restaurants reopened. But when they spoke to the waiters they used to work with them, half of them have already found new jobs and they don't want to come back, and the owners believe there will be a severe shortage of employees in the sector.
If you take a look at the bar graph that's right in front of you, it talks about the percentages of businesses that reported layoffs. Now, the one that was the top in all of this was hospitality. Now, the restaurant industry does fall under hospitality, and that bar had the highest number of reported layoffs at 69%, following healthcare, following arts.
According to the Government of Canada, about 24 million people have received at least one dose of a COVID-19 vaccine, which is approximately 64% of Canadian population. To be more specific, 19.5 million people have received partial vaccines, which is approximately 51% of the Canadian population. And 4.8 million people received full vaccines, which is 12% of the population. Based on the World Vaccine Inoculation Ranking, Canada got the first place of vaccine inoculation rate on June 17 of 2021. Based on Canadian vaccine inoculation rate, which is extremely high, British Columbia allows indoor and outdoor dining with capacity limits based on physical distancing requirements, and including a maximum of 6 people at a table. Ontario allows indoor and outdoor dining with 50% of capacity, keeping a physical distance of 2 meters, and every person should wear a mask covering both mouth and noses to enter. In the province of Quebec, they allow restaurants to reopen indoor and outdoor dining by following some rules such as floor area in square meters accessible to customers divided by 20 square meters, and the use of face coverings and physical distance of 2 meters. Therefore, it is generally agreed that the situation of restaurants is getting better due to the COVID-19 vaccine inoculation rate in Canada. Nevertheless, we should ensure that we are in a position where we can lead this situation to both positive and negative.
Now, this is very important because we need to be able to help our Canadian restaurant industry as they do more than just serve our communities. They provide back to our economy as well. Take a look. There are 1.2 million direct jobs. Food Service is Canada's fourth largest employer, but we lost nearly 2/3 of our workforce by April. Now, 293,000, we provide indirect jobs. So that means supply chain partners rely on our industry for their success. And the restaurant industry is also known as the number one source of first jobs. Food service hires and trains more young people than any other industry here in Canada. Now, there's also 90,000 places to come together and enjoy with your family and enjoy your neighborhood as well. Now, there's also $93 billion a year in sales. More than 95% of restaurant sales typically go back into the economy, but our sector could lose out as much as $45 billion this year. So we were making $93 billion a year in sales prior to COVID, but now it seems that we will be losing out as much as $45 billion this year. Finally, the restaurant industry covers about 4% of Canada's entire GDP. So that means food service businesses serve every rural and urban Canadian community, and that definitely adds up in the end for Canada's GDP in the entirety. Ever since the COVID-19 pandemic started, it has been a shock for many, many industries all over the world, whether it be restaurants, whether it be malls, whether it be haircuts, whether it be salon places, whether it just be grocery stores with limited capacity or convenience stores or even small businesses, all have been impacted by this change. And this is change that nobody could have ever prepared for because obviously it came suddenly. And now that made the government take action. They had to do something in order to to handle the situation. So with all of that has been going on, many different industries have been affected, but it's very evident that the food industry in particular has been impacted the most.